Welcome to the Five Magic F's live webinar. I'm Jan Timms and I'm the author of the best-selling book, The Ultimate Franchising Success Formula, and I'm founder of Get Smart Services and the Get Smart Learning Academy. And I consider myself really fortunate that for the past 25 years or so, I've had the opportunity to work with some really iconic franchise brands like Pack and Send, Time Zone, MBE Global, just to name a few of those. And you know how franchisors sometimes get stuck. They hit a little bit of a plateau. Well, I help franchisors either directly or indirectly through suppliers. I help them to implement systems to recruit and develop and replicate high caliber franchisee partners and to significantly grow their number of successful franchisees and eliminate that resource drain that tends to be caused by the struggling low performers. I've got systems that I use to achieve that. But before I begin, I'd just like to share a little bit about my journey into franchising. It started about 25 years ago when I joined Snap Franchising Limited as their international group manager for people development. And I learned very quickly indeed that franchising's challenging. It wasn't like the corporate world that I came from. You can't just tell franchisees what to do and expect them to do it. But the simple fact is that if we can't get franchisee buy-in and action and results from the programs and initiatives that we need to implement, it's going to slow us down. It's going to hold back success. It's as simple as that. You know, the number one critical success factor in franchising is the franchisor's ability to recruit, develop, and replicate successful franchisee partners. That's what franchising is all about, developing successful franchisees. That is what drives our economic engine. And that should be the litmus test for all strategy and decision making. And I'm so passionate about this that I actually did a PhD research study into franchising success factors. And the evidence or model that came from that is held in really quite high esteem in academic circles. It is cited by academics across the world. It's been published in several academic journals. It's been published in a chapter in an academic textbook. And I actually got invited to present the various stages of my research findings at three consecutive International Society of Franchising conferences, which was really cool because they were in 3 different continents. So I got to see some interesting places as well. Anyway, I decided that it was just much too valuable a model to leave buried in academia land. And I was already using it to help my clients, but I decided to take it a step further. So that's why I wrote the book and I established the Get Smart Learning Academy. And there's nothing more rewarding than actually working with my clients and helping them to significantly grow their number of successful franchisees. But equally, there's nothing more frustrating than to see enthusiastic, eager, fully capable franchisors get stuck or even fail when I know that that's preventable. This is really powerful stuff. It's a formula for success that I wish I had when I set out in franchising 25 years ago. And that's why I wrote the book. That's why I established the Get Smart Learning Academy, because I just want to get this powerful message for success out there into franchising land. Who would like to join me in my quest to significantly grow the number of successful franchisees that they support? Give me a thumbs up if that's you. That's fantastic. Excellent. So to do that, the first thing that we need to do is to lay the foundations. And we lay the foundations with what I call VPAC. It's a combination of vision, priorities, actions, and controls. Who's read Jim Collins' Good to Great? Fantastic book. Jim Collins reveals that great companies, they actually founded their strategy and decision making around 3 key dimensions: what they become best in the world at, what drives their economic engine, and what they can be deeply passionate about. And the point of intersection that incorporates all those 3 factors becomes their unifying vision that guides their strategies and decision making. And it can take a lot of effort and work and collaboration and brainstorming to find the right unifying vision. But you know what? In franchising, it struck me, it's easy, because in franchising, what we need to be best in the world at is recruiting, developing, and replicating thriving, wealthy, successful franchisee partners. That's what we need to be best in the world at. That's what drives our economic engine, and that's what we need to be deeply passionate about. I've got an example here of what I consider to be a really good mission and vision. You know, I don't care whether you're calling it a vision or a mission or a purpose or values, but that driving force, that guiding force. And this is Anytime Fitness. No wonder they're as successful as they are. I love the way that this is so franchisee success centric, and it's about enriching the health, wealth, and well-being of franchisees as well as the end user experience. And it's about the financial success to franchisees as well as part of their vision. So what I want to challenge you to do is think about your own mission, vision, purpose, values, whatever it is that you have, and really think about whether it is franchisee success centric. And if it's not, then maybe it needs looking at or adjusting so that franchisee success becomes the guiding principle for everything that you do. There is actually a learning activity in your workbook that you can use to step through that if you like. So moving on to priorities and action. This is a system that I developed with my clients over many years, and it makes it really quite straightforward. Starts off with a priority setting questionnaire, which is a combination of closed and open questions. It's quite in depth. It says at the beginning that it'll take about 7 minutes to complete. That's rubbish. It'll take longer than that. Most of my clients say it takes around 30 minutes to answer the questions really thoughtfully. And once you've done that, I analyze the results, and then we schedule a 60-minute digging deeper session where I will ask you questions and delve into things a little bit deeper so that I can really get a handle on what's happening. And then I put together your personal action plan and report, which spells out your priorities in terms of short-term, medium-term, and long-term priorities to achieve your goals. So it becomes a bit of a roadmap that you can use for implementation. The final part of laying the foundations was about controlling the silent killers. And who's wondered why so many franchise brands actually stall after reaching 20, 30, or even 40 locations? It's one of those things that actually happens, isn't it? Well, here's some facts for you. In Australia, 46% of franchise brands and 49% in New Zealand actually get stuck at under 20 units. In the US, that's 80% under 100. And the UK averages around about 52 outlets per franchisor. And even the larger brands have a tendency to plateau or decline somewhere between 100 and 200. Why do they plateau? What causes plateau? And finding out why actually became the research question for phase 2 of my research study. And this involved interviewing literally hundreds of people in the franchising sector: franchisors, franchisees, customers, suppliers. A couple of organizational psychologists, even the Franchise Council of Australia, were involved in the research at the time. And what we identified in that phase of the research was that there are 12 widespread issues that lurk around in franchise systems. And that's what I refer to these days as the silent killers of franchising. It sounds a little bit sexier than widespread common issues, but it's those silent killers that actually cause plateaus. And when I moved on to the next stage of my research, which involved 6 in-depth case studies, and did the compare and contrast between the very high-performing, successful franchisees and a couple that have hit plateau and one that had even hit maturity and then was in decline. So making those comparisons, one of the outstanding differences was the ability of the successful brands to identify and control those silent killers. And even the biggest brands can be stricken by silent killers. I've got an example for you here. Blockbuster, it holds a very dear place in my heart. I can remember going there with my kids when they were little and picking out different movies for us to watch over the weekend. And back in the 1990s, they seemed to be an unstoppable phenomena, but they collapsed in less than 2 decades. Why? And don't say Netflix. Netflix isn't what caused them to collapse. Netflix entered the market in 1997, but did you know that in 2000, Blockbuster actually rejected an offer from Netflix to sell out to them 50 million? And that's regarded as one of the biggest strategic mistakes in business, not just in franchising, but in business. They just didn't think it would ever take off. They thought this cloud stuff is just a fad, and that people wanted the current model. What I've got is just a quick learning activity here for us to go through. So I'm going to play you a little fable, takes a couple of minutes, and I want you to look at those silent killers that are listed in your workbook and just see if you can identify any of them at play here.
Once upon a time in a land of screens lived a kingdom of movies, bright and serene. Blockbuster stood mighty and tall, a franchise empire ruling them all. Families gathered night after night, browsing the shelves in the neon light. Laughter, debates, which film should we choose? A ritual of joy with nothing to lose. But deep in the castle, the rulers grew blind, ignoring the winds, the shifts in the times. They clung to old ways, dismissing the threat, while whispers of change spread through the net. A young upstart, nimble and keen, brought movies to homes, no store to be seen. Netflix was rising, swift in its pace, while Blockbuster sat in its towering place. A lesson for franchisors, both new and old. A kingdom can fall if its vision turns cold. Ignore the market, you're bound to decay. Resist innovation, you'll fade away. For franchisors to survive and thrive, they must adapt, evolve, and stay alive. The tale of Blockbuster etched in time, a warning wrapped in a fable's rhyme.
Hey, so did we spot some silent killers that were at play in that? Here's six that I just pulled together. And unifying vision, not having a clear future focused vision for franchisee success, no appetite for knowledge exploration into the disruptive technologies that were going on. Basically, they thought they knew it all. Clinging to past success. There's just a whole heap of things wrapped up there. So that's just a short little activity. In my program, there are lots of learning activities and even a simulation game to help you really hone your skills at identifying these silent killers and then coming up with strategies to control and prevent them. So that is the foundation component. Let's now have a look at how we can make magic happen. Wouldn't it be absolutely wonderful if I could just wave my magic wand and conjure up successful franchisees for you from the sky? What I want you to do is, in your mind's eye, focus on successful franchisees. What do they look like? What kind of cars do they drive? What clothes are they wearing? What sort of houses do they live in? What are some of the things that they are doing? Have that really clear picture in your mind's eye as I try to conjure up some successful franchisees for you. Franchise goddess of the stars, find fuel and foster five fast, and conjure up success that lasts. With wisdom bright and vision clear, thriving successful franchisees shall suddenly appear. Okay. That didn't really seem to work, did it? Well, I guess we have to work a little bit harder than that at working our magic. So let me share with you the 5 magic F's framework to significantly grow successful franchisees numbers. First of all, we need to find the key to replication. Then we've got to fuel our competitive advantage, foster a thriving culture, and make sure that we provide 5-star franchisee support and fast-track accelerated learning. And I've got systems embedded in all of those that will help you to do it. Let's start off by looking at finding the key to replication. Who here has struggled, who's been bitten on the bum when they've made poor recruitment decisions? Come on, I know I have. It certainly has happened to me. And do you know, it just drains resources so much when we make poor recruitment decisions like that. So it's really makes it, makes it quite difficult. Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, again, has quite a famous quote, and he says that we need to get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus and in the right seats. And that is all about finding the key to replication, your RDR success behaviors. So the way we do that is to identify the best and most successful franchisees that we have in a system. And we need to understand what it is that they do differently that the others are not doing, because they become those differentiating factors. And then we use that framework to develop potential new stars so that they shine even brighter. And then we let go of those that no matter how hard you try, they just won't shine. So it's understanding what it is that actually makes them shine that is our key to replication. And talking about getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus and in the right seats. Well, I've got a really good example of a franchise group that did that. And I think actually we had somebody registered for this. Jermaine, I think, was registered for this session from Past the Keys in the UK. And they, over the past 12 months, have actually exited 30 of their franchisees. And yet, sales are up 20%. Individual franchisee of the franchise that remain average 40% up. And franchisee engagement has improved from 36% to 86%. So that's a really good result. It's quite dramatic action that's been taken, but they're finding that is now putting them in a much better position for continuing on and implementing more aspects of the success formula. I've got an example of a client that I worked with, Pack and Send. They're a subsidiary of MBE Global. They've got over 170 franchise outlets across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. And they actually, back in 2022, faced a really quite critical challenge. They had inconsistent business-to-business sales performance from their franchisees. They were very reactive but not proactive, and they needed to turn that around. Franchisees that were they're kind of reluctant and lack the confidence to engage with business-to-business sales activities. And what they're also finding is the lead conversion rate was very low. It was only averaging around 11%. And a lot of leads just never even got followed up at all. And there were some knowledge gaps in the approach to selling because they weren't easily able to articulate how Pack and Send's services can actually solve customer problems and create opportunities. So we developed a program using the 5 Magic F's framework to do that. So I'm going to use this as an example all the way through just to show you a practical application to an actual project that I worked on. How did we find the key to replication? Well, the first thing that we did was just a brainstorm session with the field support team, and from that, we identified some key behavior patterns that became a framework for us to then go and test. And what we did then was test it using mystery shopping. So we mystery shopped the top 20% and the lower 20% and identified the differences in behavior, how well they handled the leads. Some of the ones in the lower performing area didn't even follow it up at all. Some followed it up, but in a very reactional kind of way, or just flicked an email, whereas the top performers engaged and really asked questions and really tried to find out more about what was actually going on. So with that, we were then able to delve into it a little bit deeper, and we held a virtual workshop with the top performers, and got some more details out of that. And then I followed that up with one-on-one interviews. And what was the result was a replication system for business to business sales that we were then able to start thinking about how we were going to roll it out. As a learning activity for you, what I want you to do is to visualize your top franchisee performers. And what are 5 things that they do that the struggling low performers don't do? Franchise success isn't just about having people on board. It's about ensuring that you have the right people and helping them shine even brighter. Dare I differ from Jim Collins for a second? Because rather than driving buses, I prefer a different metaphor. I think that in franchising, rather than driving buses, we need to be flying starships. And I use this cosmic metaphor because I like to think of the franchisor as a mothership navigating through a galaxy of stars and helping the dull stars to shine more brightly. Who here is maybe ready to take up the challenge of flying starships, not driving buses? Give me a thumbs up if that's something that you're willing to consider. Fantastic. That's brilliant. Let's do it. Moving on. The next step is fueling competitive advantage. And this really is about how we grasp the knowledge that exists within the franchise network, and also outside of that, also external to that. Many franchisors struggle to keep their operations manuals current and relevant and useful. Some have managed to rise to the challenge of creating a living, breathing knowledge hub that's become the go-to place for absolutely all knowledge. And this is where we all need to be, folks. That's what we need to strive for. Here's a quote from my thesis. Actually, it's paraphrased from 8 different research studies, all of them finding that knowledge management is absolutely critical in franchising for competitive advantage. In fact, I'd go as far to say that know-how is your only true advantage that you have as a franchisor. So it's not enough to just create an operations manual, tick, job done, right. You've got to actually develop an insatiable appetite for gathering that new know-how and refining it so that it can be made accessible to everybody and then shared and protected in a dynamic living knowledge hub. And the way that we protect it, I mean, protection is 2 dimensions to protecting that. First of all, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So we need to make sure that knowledge is actually brought to life and used. And also avoiding the brain drain. When somebody leaves, a lot of their knowledge leaves with them, whether that's somebody from the franchisor team, whether that is experienced franchisees. So protecting it in that way. So let's just have a look at how we can do that. This shows how we need a system for grasping that knowledge. It appears really simple, but a system's needed to do it. So let me just share this story with you.
I recently spent some time in the goldfields near Kalgoorlie, Western Australia, where I met John, a passionate gold prospector. John, a rugged man wearing a utility belt and boots, eagerly holds up a large gold nugget, grinning. John was thrilled to show me the huge nugget that he'd found. He was careful not to reveal exactly where he'd found it, of course. But John wasn't always this successful. In the beginning, he stumbled across the odd nugget, but often went weeks without finding anything. Then he met some people who were willing to share their knowledge, for a fee, of course. They ran training courses for novice prospectors. They sold highly sensitive and expensive metal detectors, and they developed an app that highlighted gold-rich areas yet to be claimed. And with this new system, John's fortunes changed. He quickly recovered his investment, and now instead of working in the city as an electrician, he spends his days prospecting for gold in the Australian outback. There's a valuable lesson in here, one that applies directly to franchising. We should all just give up franchising and go prospecting for gold instead. Just joking. John armed himself with a system to make gold exploration more efficient. Similarly, franchisors need a system to uncover and refine valuable knowledge within their networks. But here's the best part. Unlike gold, knowledge is an infinite resource, and with the right approach, detecting it should be so much easier and far more rewarding. And that's why I'm sticking with franchising instead of prospecting for gold, because the real treasure is unlocking knowledge and sharing it and turning it into success. So are you ready to start prospecting for the hidden gold in your franchise network?
There is a whole section of the book that is dedicated to the grasp process, for fueling your knowledge creation engine. I'd invite you to delve into that. Well, I'm going to show you the pack and send, how this worked out in the pack and send example. So how we went, I've already said how we gathered the sales success behaviors. I've already explained that. So that is, the gathering phase. Then how we then refined that. So analyzed and categorized the behaviors into a framework that were then documented in their business to business sales system and toolkit. So that made it accessible. And then we shared it with the learning workshops and success case studies and storytelling, and then protected it, first of all, by keeping it alive with on-the-job coaching and assessment and sales meetings and advanced selling skills, but also by having it documented in the Knowledge Hub. And what this does is helps to avoid that brain drain, the proverbial reinvention of the wheel and loss of intellectual property when people leave. Who here's actually experienced that brain drain when and being affected by it? Yeah. It's really, it can be quite a pain. Who's ready to grasp know-how, the process of grasping know-how? Give me a thumbs up if that's you. Fantastic. Excellent. All right, let's move on to our next F, which is about fostering a thriving culture. When we often grapple with a certain degree of franchisee discontent and mistrust. And unfortunately, this disengagement holds back buy-in, action, and results. So it slows down our success. And another component of that is actually the communication as well. I mean, effective communication is something that a lot of franchise groups or any organizations grapple with, for that matter. So what we need to have effective communication is we need to get all three of our C's in order. So before you can have effective communication, you need your culture and your collaboration C's happening. So let's just go through those quickly and look at culture. First of all, the 6 pillars of a thriving culture. And I'm going to quote from Jim Collins one more time. He says that the truly great companies are defined by discipline. They have a lot of discipline. They made up of self-disciplined people who engage in disciplined thought and take disciplined action. They also, though, mutual supportiveness is a really important aspect of culture. It means going beyond the obvious and embedding support and mutual supportiveness actually into the culture, creating win-win that makes the whole network actually shine. And then, of course, there's trustworthiness. We all talk about trust. In order to earn trust, you have to earn trust. In order to gain trust, you have to earn trust. And I'm going to borrow here from Stephen Covey's 8th Habit, where he talks about the speed of trust and how you can actually really speed things up by using what he calls the emotional bank account. And he talks about 7 trust building credits, 10 trust building credits and 10 trust destroying debits, and how they need to be balanced, and you need to make sure that you're always in credit, so that when the things go wrong, that there's plenty of credits built up. And actually, in my book, I do have converted that framework into franchising specific examples. The next aspect here is learning orientation. And if you can embed learning orientation into your culture, you've found the key to turning those engine cogs, the knowledge creation engine cogs. But it won't happen without discipline, mutual supportiveness, and trust. So collaboration, one of the three C's, and really, really critical. But again, lack of trust leads to knowledge sharing hostility. And yeah, really, trust is everything in franchise. And then finally, we have relationship commitment. And franchising is all about commitment. It's a long-term investment in brand loyalty and keeping promises. It's that investment that is dedicated to mutually beneficial relationships. And that is truly understanding the interdependent nature of franchising, that there needs to be power balance between franchisor and franchisee. Next, we want to look at the structure. So this is about avoiding the silos. We have to avoid hierarchy and break down those silos and aim for a much more collaborative, organic structure. This is a quote from Greg Nathan, who is a very well-known franchising psychologist in Australia. And he's actually saying that departments need to collaborate with each other much more closely, and that training should align with operations, not human resources. And he also goes on to say that whenever there's been a disaster in franchising, direct cause correlates to departments not working together effectively enough. Collaborative communication is what we aim for. Communication is what I like to call the gravitational attraction that holds the franchise system together. And there's a lot of barriers to knowledge discovery and transfer that are associated with communication. And it's much more than just that sending and receiving of messages. So to get your communication strategy right, collaborative communication isn't going to work in an unhealthy culture with a hierarchical structure, unbalanced power or asymmetrical power, and poor knowledge appetite. That's just, it's not going to work. You actually have to get your culture and your structure right. And that's about matching communication strategy with what we call the channel conditions. And your channel conditions are the mix or the balance of culture, structure, that power tension. That needs to be in balance, not the franchisor having the power and using coercive power on franchisees, but equally not some franchisees that have become too powerful and are exerting power over the franchisor to get what they want. So we've got to have that balance of power and that interdependent relationship. And then the appetite for discovering and refining and transferring knowledge. And if those conditions are in place, then collaborative communication works absolutely fantastically. If they're not, then we need to maybe use a balance or a mix of different forms of communication until we actually manage to improve the situation. So again, looking at how we manage the communication process with pack and send in our case study. The culture side, we began the process of driving cultural change from a reactional customer service to strategic solution relationship oriented proactive selling. That involved quite a cultural shift. They're not there yet, but they're a long way along the journey 3 years later. We did the collaboration. I've already described the collaboration part by collaboration with the franchisee support team, collaboration with respected franchisee partners. So that was how we handled that side. And then the communication started with a conference keynote. I did a keynote presentation at that conference to launch the learning program that we had put together. There was also communication and pre-workshop preparation prior to that. The franchisee support team, they were absolutely fantastic in really getting the message across about how this was going to be beneficial. And then once we got going, ongoing success stories from the early adopters, and that then helped to continue momentum. So that was how we applied the 3 C's component there. Okay, our next F is having a 5-star franchisee support system. And by this, a lot of franchise groups are a bit informal and ad hoc. about their approach to franchisee support. The really successful brands have got a solid structure and system in place to drive operational excellence and consistent performance and sustainable growth. So that's really where we all need to be, is getting franchisee support to that level. But if franchisees are going to become shining stars, then your franchisee support team need to be star enablers. So it's about delivering knowledge and identifying when franchisees need a fuel top up, when they're in need of extra support in some way, gathering and sharing know-how, the G part of GRASP out there at the coalface. Your franchisee support guys are an absolute great opportunity to gather and share that know-how. And I always say, start off every meeting, and this is in the franchisor head office as well as meetings with franchisees or just franchise meetings in general, group franchise meetings. Start off every meeting with a knowledge sharing moment. Who's got a knowledge sharing moment to share with us? And gather a few of those little gold nuggets that can then be brought together. So that's a really good habit to get into. Safety's been doing it for years, having safety shares at the beginning of meetings. So we just need to think about knowledge in the same way. They need to be brand ambassadors, and they're also responsible for system alignment. The problem is it's so difficult to get franchisee support right. This is a quote from the research, but it's one of many on that same theme. It's just so hard to get it right. But unfortunately, it's the biggest source of complaint and dispute. And, why is that? Is it that franchisees have got unrealistic expectations? Or is your support really good enough to deliver on that unifying vision of developing thriving, wealthy, successful franchisee partners? So it's really critical that you take that on board and decide whether your support is actually there, or whether it's something that needs a bit of a revamp and needs looking at. And there's evidence to support that investing in high caliber franchisee support really pays off. This is another quote from Greg Nathan, that a new high caliber franchisee support manager actually managed to achieve sales increases in excess of 40% across the region within 12 months. So that's the kind of difference that can come about by just upping the caliber of the franchisee support that is being provided. So this is a little system that we use to build 5-star franchisee support system with my clients. It starts off by identifying the time wasters, those support time wasters that happen. And that might be things like using the support team as messengers rather than ambassadors, having unstructured social calls, being too overemphasis on compliance rather than developing success behaviors. Those are the sorts of things that we regard as field support time wasters. So there's some tools and activities to actually go and identify those. And then once you've identified it, it's defining the who, what, when of franchisee support. What is it going to look like? What's your system going to look like? And it's not a one size fits all. It needs to have flexibility as well as structure. So it's not going to look exactly the same for new franchisees as it looks for established franchisees. They might need less frequent but higher level, more strategic support, for example. What about franchisees that you've put on ICU because they're really struggling? There's another level of support there again. And those that you're helping to exit the system, because that's what their plans are. So we need flexibility built into the system, and then we'll design our 5-star system. Now, I've said 5 stars because 5 stars fits nicely with my 5 magic F's framework, doesn't it? But it could equally be 6-star or 7-star, depending on how many star behavior categories you actually identify when we go through this process. I don't think anybody wants a 3-star or a 4-star support system. So 5-star has to become the minimum there. So that's when we actually get down to the nitty gritty of designing it, then we need to make sure that we prepare and fuel up the team. Investing in the professional development of your field support team is so important. Making sure that they've got the skills and the knowledge and the capabilities that are necessary to deliver on 5-star franchisee support system that you want to put in place. And then if this is a new system, we then go and launch our skyrockets. We go, right, this is, build the excitement, the communication piece, so that we are getting buy-in, action, and results. So becomes that 5th step in the process. Pack and send. How did we do that? So here's our example there of how that 5-star support was in place over this project. The franchisee support manager program, first of all, so they were fueled up or trained up on the program well ahead of time, and they were able to develop their skills and knowledge and capabilities in all of the areas that we were expecting of franchisees. We also did a train the trainer program with the Pack and Send's learning and development manager, so that she was then able to take the program and deliver it continually. There's deliver once, that's it. That kind of one-off stuff just doesn't work. Things really do need to be ongoing. So the train the trainer program, and then a coaching skills program for the franchisee support managers as well, so that they were able to coach franchisees in the skills that we wanted to develop. And during the workshops, the franchisee support manager were actually coaches in the role plays. So they were practicing coaching and giving feedback to the franchisees during those workshop sessions. And then that converted to on-the-job coaching within 7 days. So within 7 days of participating in the program, a franchisee support manager would come out and actually coach you in putting that into action, and then ongoing intensive coaching for 3 months. So that is an example of 5-star support. Who's ready to embrace a 5-star support system? I hope so. It's really critical, really, really critical. Last F is fast track accelerated learning, and very, very important. Who's actually experienced challenges in getting franchisees to buy in and take action and getting results from training initiatives that you try to roll out? It's challenging, isn't it? It can be really quite difficult. Who's invested in training and found that it just didn't work, didn't achieve the results that you wanted and the action that you hoped for? I mean, that's another challenging aspect of it. Here's some facts. Sadly, 40% of learners fail to transfer what they have actually learned in a training workshop into the workplace. And of the 60% that do transfer some of that, 70% of those have faltered within 12 months and gone back to their old habits. And only 50% of investment in training actually results in business performance. So that's kind of really, really sad. And why is that? I mean, training is what I'm delivering to you right now. Learning is what you receive. So it becomes your knowledge. And if learning doesn't actually become new knowledge for you, then it's a waste of time and resources. But learning that then results in no action is an absolute failure too. So we've really got to think about how we can achieve real learning and action and lasting behavior change and results from the programs that we put together. And the system I use for that is what I call Wickham. So this Wickham system. So let me just quickly run through what that is all about. So first of all, the training needs to be worthwhile, relevant, useful. It has it passed the litmus test? Is this going to help develop thriving, wealthy, successful franchisee partners? Because that's the purpose. And also then, do the franchisees perceive it as that? Do they see the benefits that they're going to get? Do they see it as worthwhile, relevant, and useful? We need to make sure, of course, that it's interactive and engaging, trying to make it fun and interesting, and because people learn in that kind of environment far better. It needs to be convenient, efficient, with minimal disruption to business. And of course, we need to make sure that know-how is actually transferred, and that assessment and reinforcement occurs then to prevent that knowledge leakage. And then the important step of measuring the business outcomes so that we actually know which 50% of the training that we put out there is working and what's not, so that we can just focus on what is actually working and achieving results. So how was that applied to Pack and Send? I've talked about the conference keynote, the early adopters. So they were all things that were wrapped around getting the message out there that this is going to be worthwhile, relevant, and useful. We made sure that the workshops were interactive and engaging, and they were. I'm very good at what I do, so they most certainly were. How did we make sure that they were convenient and not having to as minimal disruption on business? Well, first of all, we would not waste valuable face-to-face workshop time on theory, introducing models. Workshop time is all about skill building. So we had a series of pre-work activities that were framed around action, so that the franchisees that participated in the program had already prepared for it. They'd already decided who their top 200 prospects were going to be that were going to target when they go back to work on Monday. They already had a number of different things in place so that they were action ready before they even came to the workshops. And so we then made sure they were held on a weekend, because Pack and Send is a Monday to Friday business. So running the workshops across the weekend is what suits them better. And these days, the Learning and Development Manager also runs versions of this as virtual workshops, lunch and learn sessions and things. So that's how it's being coped with in the ongoing sense. We made sure we built in knowledge quizzes, live Kahoot quizzes. That Kahoots are like a bit of a game show, fun game, but it's basically picking the right answers and having a bit competitive as well. Lots of fun, but very, very good for knowledge, cementing knowledge. Also lots of learning recap activities throughout. That was also built into the program. The assessment or action piece of it occurred with that immediate coaching that I've talked about, the reinforcement from the franchisee support team, and actually working with franchisees on real play instead of just role play in a workshop. Then there were group sales meetings and support and on the job coaching. And it was 3 months intensive for each set of workshops. So they didn't repeat the cycle of workshops for 3 months. So people that were invited to attend the first time round, you've then built up some desire in people wanting to get involved in the next round and so on. And the reason for that was, don't roll it out too quickly. It's not just a once off and then it's done. You've got to support them, or else it's not going to be successful. So that support component, you need to allow the timings and the resourcing to make sure that occurs as well. And then finally, the results tracking dashboard was how we took track of measuring. Now, I'm sure you realize I'm going to share the results with you because naturally it's a case study. So 3 years on, this is what Raj Chandiok, the Vice President for Network Sales and Operations, had to say about the program, which is fantastic. Great buy-in and engagement, 80% already part of the journey. That's phenomenal. And a network-wide shift to proactive solution-based selling. So that cultural part has really started to shift there, and increased conversion rates and double-digit growth, and franchisees retaining their key accounts and actually building stronger relationships. So I'm very, very happy with the results that they've achieved. There was actually a second follow-up workshop, advanced selling skills, 12 months later, that I rolled out the first round of as well. And then that's now handled by their own learning and development manager. But, so that was reinforcement again. Here's what one of the franchisee participants said. And he actually complimented the quality of the training initially, but then he said, I'm very confident that this is going to take my business to the next level. And look what he did actually manage to achieve in 2023 and 2024. So certainly did pay off for him. Who's actually heard that knowledge is power? I'm sure we've all heard that. I've got news for you. Knowledge isn't power. It's action, and implementation is the true source of power. And Napoleon actually said, if you listen, you'll forget, but if we write it down, you might remember, but only when you implement do you truly understand. What I have shared with you here is the knowledge. That's the 5 magic F systems to find the key to replication, to fuel competitive advantage, to foster a thriving culture, and to provide 5-star franchisee support and fast-track accelerated learning. Raise your hand if you gained some value from today. Raise your hand if you learned something new. And keep it raised if you intend putting some of that into action. Fantastic. So what I'd like to do is just finally share a couple of suggestions for action with you. First of all, that success diagnostic that I talked about, the priority setting questionnaire and the digging deeper session, and then the action plan and priority report. So that I'm offering to 6 participants of these workshops, a complimentary success diagnostic. And with that, I don't just do the diagnostic and then leave you to it. You actually get a month's complimentary membership of the Get Smart Learning Academy. You get a personal onboarding session so I can pinpoint exactly where you need to look through the vast amount of material that's there to work on your particular priority project. And then when you're ready at the end of the month or sooner if you're ready, we'll have a 60-minute coaching and mentoring session so that we can go through your implementation plan and I can give you some support and advice with that. So that's the first suggestion. My second one, you might want to take it a little step further. We have got this, what I call the franchise growth bundle, which for $97, you get a whole heap of value. You can see there, you not only get a hard copy version of this fantastic book, you also get access to the audio book and 2 months membership of the Get Smart Learning Academy. The success diagnostic is complimentary with the bundle as well. And you get 2 60-minute coaching sessions and lifetime access to the free resources vault, which is full of workshops, worksheets and templates and tools and that sort of thing. And finally, if you're not sure, that's fine. If you just want to have a chat and explore journey options, then you can actually go and take me up on this one here. It'll take you to this QR code will take you to a boarding pass where you can fill in your passenger details. Bit of fun with the spaceship metaphor there, but and book a time to talk to me about the various journey options that we offer. So those are 3 suggestions that I've got. I do hope that some of you will take me up on some of that. In the meantime, is there any questions? Okay, well, look, so thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed delivering this. I hope that you've enjoyed participating as well. And I hope our paths cross sometime again in the future. Take care.